I realized that I was the other woman when I looked in my boyfriend's closet and found clothes that didn't belong to me. Part 2. Just to recap, I went to my boyfriend's cottage and found a load of women's clothing in his wardrobe. I went round the house and cut all his appliance wires, buried his shirts and stole his girlfriend's suit. I then went to work wearing the suit and confronted him. Last time you checked in, I had just organized a meeting with his girlfriend. I didn't tell her who I was, although when she found out, I might as well have punched her in the face. Her name was Katie. She was much taller than me with long brown hair and a genuinely beautiful face, which made it feel so much worse. I told her that I was her boyfriend's colleague and that I needed to drop off some work for him. Naturally, she invited me to the cottage, so I rocked up at 4 p.m. as before. He was away at a conference, and I knew because he was bitching to my work friend about having to buy a load of shirts for the occasion. After all, I had ruined all of his. I arrived, took a deep breath and knocked on the door. She swung it open with a warm smile, poor clueless idiot, and welcomed me in. I had no idea how I was supposed to start this conversation. Oh hi Katie, I've been having intimacy with your boyfriend for 3 years, and by the way, I chose the kettle you are currently boiling. It was so hard to find the words. So I sat down and said, so Katie, I have to be honest with you. I am technically a work colleague of your partner's, but I came here today to tell you that we have been in a relationship for 3 years. I had no idea about you until the day I called you. I was here making dinner and I found your clothes in the wardrobe. I thought I should tell you. She froze, her back to me as she stood next to the boiling kettle, and quietly she whispered, why are you telling me this? I was confused, so I replied, well, if you had found out before me then I would have wanted to know. She snapped, I don't believe you. Please leave. I stood up and implored her to talk to me, but she became angrier. But when I got to the front door, I suddenly heard her break down and cry. I ran back into the kitchen. She was sitting on the floor, mascara streaming down her lovely face. I crouched down and asked, can I help? She buried her head in her hands, so I put my arm around her and we sat until she calmed down. In a small voice, she looked at my face and said, thank you. I'm sorry for being so nasty. I reassured her. After all, she was hurting in the same way as I was. We spent about 40 minutes sitting on the floor. I told her all about what I had done to the cottage and even got a tiny laugh from her. Finally, she looked at me and said that she didn't know about me, that she would never have started to date him if she knew. They had met at a networking event in Scotland a year ago, and 6 months in, she moved down from Edinburgh to be with him. But as her dad is sick, she goes back to Scotland most weekends, which would explain the crossover. I hated him more because she was such a nice person, harmless and well-intentioned. Why is it always the nice girls? I proposed a plan. We ordered pizza and a bottle of wine and plotted against our horrible cheating boyfriend. He was due back the next day, Saturday, so we agreed that I would stay over. As weird as that was, I would help her pack, and then when he returned, we'd be sat in the living room with her bags and put him on trial. Our plan ran like hot butter, and he walked the next morning. I thought his eyes were going to pop out of his skull. He stood paralyzed, staring first at me and then at Katie. He said, hi darling, and I replied, sorry, was that to me or Katie? He dropped his bag and proceeded to spill his guts, apologizing and rambling on about how he couldn't decide between us, that he was confused and frightened at the idea of losing either of us. It was an amazing performance. It was at this point that I stood up, which gave Katie her cue to exit, but she just sat there, like a wet lettuce. I turned to her and said, come on Katie, he's pathetic, let's go. But instead, she went over to him and hugged him. She turned to me and said, I am so mad with him, and I appreciate your help and I do like you, but I'm not ready to leave. With eyebrows as high as my self-esteem, I wished her well and walked out. At least I got the closure I needed. It's a shame I had to leave that little lamb to walk blindly into the jaws of a lion, but that's her problem now.